We're just kids. We're not soldiers.
The commanding officers turned away. Acceptable losses. And the orders stood. 40 children marched into the jaws of titans. Only one crawled out, covered in the blood of his friends.
Akeno. She was right there, reaching for me. I couldn't save her.
He clutched her dog tag, like a promise he would keep long after the world had forgotten. The kingdom buried the massacre under a single line. Training accident. The files were sealed.
A training accident? They knew the truth. They sent us to die.
Riku was discharged without ceremony. No honors, no funeral for his friends, just silence.
I'll find out who did this. I'll make them answer, even if it takes my whole life.
He walked away with only a dog tag and a secret. 40 names burned into his mind. The truth would wait, but it would not be forgotten. 8 years had passed since the training accident. The boy who survived now wore the uniform of the Scout Corps, but one thing hadn't changed. His obsession. At enlistment, he made a single demand. He would join, but only in the Personnel Records Division.
They can laugh all they want. I didn't come here to play soldier. I came for the files.
He produced a bound report, supply discrepancies he'd uncovered just from reading public gazettes. The officer stared. A week later, Riku was transferred to the damp basement that housed the kingdom's classified records. That night, in his sparse bunk, he nailed an empty corkboard to the wall. It waited, like him, from his pocket. He pulled a single worn dog tag. He hung it on a nail beside the board.
40 names. Then the one who signed the order.
He was finally where the truth was buried. In the cold archive, Riku began where identities start, personnel records. He pulled tattered enlistment cards from 8 years ago.
They didn't bother destroying these, just filed under discontinued units.
One by one, he transcribed the names. 40 children, ages 10 to 13. Every card held a face he remembered.
Kenji, Maiko, Toru, Akeno. I won't let them be erased.
But names alone proved nothing. He needed evidence that the kingdom had armed them deliberately. In a dusty box labeled Quartermaster Requests, he found forms for 40 sets of child-sized uniforms and field gear. The forms bore a logistics officer's signature, but the authorization codes traced to a classified wartime budget line. Item codes: 7 to 9-year-old uniforms. Quantity: 40. Purpose: Junior Auxiliary. The kingdom had officially outfitted a child battalion.
Junior Auxiliary. That's what they called us. A neat term for human bait.
He had proof of preparation. But the deployment order that sent them to die remained sealed beyond his clearance. He spent weeks combing every file he could reach. The deployment order seemed erased from existence. Then, inside a box of misfiled disciplinary records, he found a carbon copy. Most of it was black bars. The redacted order still showed a command stamp at the bottom. The name was blacked out, but the seal was unmistakable. He compared it to every known general's seal. Only one matched. General Vald, commander of the Northern Front.
General Vald. Decorated war hero. And now, the name on the order that killed 40 children.
But in the same file, he found a separate memorandum marked internal only. Dated 1 week before the deployment. To deploy minors as forward bait violates every ethic of command. I register my strongest objection. However, the directive comes from the highest authority.
He objected. He knew it was wrong. So who forced his hand?
The memorandum cited orders from the Royal Logistics Corps, a supply and command adjunct that answered only to the Queen. General Vald was not the architect. He was a lever pulled by someone higher. The real enemy was still hidden. He traced the supply codes. Every request led back to the Royal Logistics Corps.
The Queen's own quartermasters authorized those shipments. They knew what they were supplying.
A requisition form bore the royal seal. Junior Auxiliary Field Kit, priority procurement, by order of Her Majesty's War Council. 40 youth auxiliaries are to be equipped for forward reconnaissance duty.
Forward reconnaissance. That's what they called sending us to die.
He layered the requisition over a command chart, a direct line from the Queen's office to Vald's forced signature. He had supply proof and a protest memo, but not the direct royal authorization that would shatter the myth.
If a clean copy exists, it's in the palace archives. I'd have to break in.
Breaking into the royal archives meant high treason, execution without trial. The names on his wall had paid a higher price. He began to plan. 3 nights later, he scaled the rear wall of the palace archive. A shadow among shadows. The basement window was unguarded. He dropped into a chamber of iron shelves and dead silence. He found the locked cabinet, Royal Council minutes, war period. His picks caught the tumblers. Inside, a thin folder marked wartime auxiliary measures. The paper was crisp and official. The War Council recommends deployment of minors as forward scouts to minimize trained soldier casualties. Acceptable risk.
Acceptable risk. They typed that without a tremble, without naming the children they would burn.
He photographed every page. The camera's click echoed softly in the dark, solid proof. But on the final page, only the counselor's initials. No signature of the Queen herself.
The council proposed it, but her approval is still missing. I need her handwriting.
He returned the files to their place and slipped out. The hunt for the direct order was not over. He crept through the dark corridor. Footsteps echoed. He pressed into a doorway. The guard passed. Riku slipped into a side room. An old royal seal hung on the wall. Behind a false panel, an iron chest. The old lock yielded. Inside, one folder. The folder held a single document. At the bottom, in elegant handwriting, Queen Eleonora. I hereby authorize the formation of the Junior Auxiliary, expendable forward scouts, effective immediately.
Her hand. The Queen herself. The woman they call the kingdom's savior.
He had the proof, but exposing it would shatter the kingdom's founding myth. In his mind, the statue's smile turned cold. The beloved martyr had murdered 40 children.
The list on my wall. Akeno's tag. All for her strategy document.
He folded the paper, slipped it into his jacket, and left. The secret was his now. For 2 days he did not sleep. The Queen's signature lay in his pocket, a weight that grew heavier each hour.
They built a statue to you, and underneath it, the bones of 40 children.
That evening, he found an envelope on his bunk. No name, just a single sheet inside. You have been looking into matters from the war. If you want the whole truth, come to Warehouse 7 tomorrow at midnight. Come alone.
No signature, but who else knows what I've found? General Vald, the man who signed the order. Why would he reach out now? This could be a trap.
He looked at the corkboard. 40 names. Akeno's tag. The truth he had risked everything to find.
If there's more to know, I need to hear it, even from him.
Midnight. Warehouse 7 stood dark and silent. Riku stepped inside through a rusted door.
I am here. Show yourself.
So you came. I am General Vald. The signature on that order is mine.
He admits it openly. No denial. This isn't the man I expected.
But I signed under protest. The Queen's War Council gave me no choice. They threatened my family. The Junior Auxiliary was her strategy. A cold calculation to preserve adult soldiers. Children were expendable.
Vald pulled a worn folder from his coat. I kept this for 10 years. Evidence of the order I was forced to sign. Inside were duplicates of every document. The council memo, the Queen's signed authorization, and a long letter of confession.
After the slaughter, I worked to erase the program from existence. I failed the dead, but I stopped it from killing more.
He's been carrying this alone. Not the villain, but the one who obeyed and then spent years undoing it.
The Queen is dead, but the truth should not be buried with her. I called you because someone must know.
Now, Riku held the kingdom's darkest secret. The enemy was a martyr. Justice would demand a new kind of war. Back in his bunk, he laid the documents side by side, the Queen's elegant signature next to Vald's coerced one.
If I expose her, the kingdom could fracture into civil war. The dead would be used as a weapon.
He looked at the 40 names. Their silence was louder than any war. That night, in a waking dream, he stood among them again. Not as the survivor, but as the one who still had a voice.
What do you want from me? Revenge or remembrance?
They did not ask for fire. They asked to be remembered. He woke with the answer. Not to burn the kingdom, but to make sure the 40 names were never forgotten.
I'll publish their names, their stories, the cover-up. But the Queen's role, I'll bury it. I will not let them use your death to tear this country apart.
He began to write. Not the full truth, but the only one that could still heal. For 3 nights, he wrote by candlelight, shaping a story that would honor the dead without toppling the kingdom. He finished the manuscript and sealed it in an envelope. The 40 names were its heart. He needed a voice outside the military, a journalist known for exposing the ugly truth. They met in a back alley cafe. Riku slid the envelope across a scarred wooden table. The journalist read through the documents. His coffee went cold. The journalist whispered, "This is the massacre they called a training accident."
I was there. Every name in that envelope is someone I carried.
The journalist pushed the envelope back. "I'll run it, but I need to verify every source." Then he tucked the envelope into his coat and stood. "Give me a week."
1 week. Then the 40 names will finally be spoken.
He sent word to Vald through a dead drop. Another midnight meeting in the warehouse.
The journalist has the story. The 40 names, the cover-up, your order. I left out the Queen.
You are protecting a ghost. Why?
Because if I don't, the kingdom burns. I want them remembered, not made into revolutionary ammunition.
Vald nodded slowly. He pulled out a handwritten statement, ready to accept public blame for the order.
I'll say I signed it under wartime pressure from a dead logistics officer. It will be enough.
Back in the barracks, Riku held the Queen's authorization, the last piece of proof he would never use.
Her name will never stain theirs. I bury it tonight.
He lit a match. The paper curled and blackened in the steel bucket. Queen Eleonora's crime turned to ash. Now there was only the waiting. The story would break at dawn, and the kingdom would finally mourn the 40. The days before publication were heavy with silence. He reviewed his evidence one last time. The hard-won documents, the list of 40 names. He took the last card, Akeno's name, and pinned it at the center. The board was complete before dawn. He visited the small shrine he had built in a hidden grove. Akeno's photograph, a single candle.
Akeno, tomorrow, your name will be spoken across the kingdom. I kept my promise.
He wrote letters to families who had no bodies to bury. Words of remembrance for each child. Your son, Kenji, shared his bread with me the night before the mission. He was brave. The letters would never be sent. In the pre-dawn dark, he met the journalist at the cafe. The morning papers were already being loaded.
Here is General Vald's confession. The story is complete.
The journalist nodded. It runs tomorrow. The 40 names will be in every headline.
Then I can rest for a little while. The truth they need is finally free.
At dawn, the presses across the capital roared to life. Every edition carried the same heading. On street corners, people stopped and stared. The silence felt heavier than artillery. Riku stood at a newsstand, his eyes fixed on the bold type. 40 children, sacrificed, cover up exposed.
There, your names are finally out of the shadows. 40 of you, right under my thumb.
A woman nearby gasped. An older man removed his hat. The paper trembled in their hands. He paid the vendor with cold coins and folded the paper carefully, as if wrapping a body.
Akeno, Mother of my promise. The kingdom will finally mourn what it refused to bury.
More copies were snatched up. The news spread like a fissure through stone.
I can't undo what happened. But now they're not just a lie anymore. The world gets to cry with me.
He stood apart, watching the city begin to ache, knowing this was only the first tremor. By midday, a crowd had gathered outside military headquarters. Their shouts demanded answers for the 40 dead. Mothers held photographs of children who had vanished 8 years ago. Their grief finally given a voice. The government called it a fabrication. Then, a second leak published the redacted deployment order with Vald's signature.
They can't bury it now. Too many copies have already spread across the capital.
Under immense public pressure, an official investigation was announced. The headlines promised accountability. Citizens packed the streets, demanding the names of every officer who had sent children into the jaws of titans.
Vald will give them a name, a scapegoat. That will be enough to satisfy the anger.
The kingdom's foundation trembled. Riku alone knew he held the thread that could unravel it completely. He watched from the crowd's edge, sunglasses hiding his eyes, feeling satisfaction that felt too much like guilt. The truth he chose spread. The dead were no longer erased, but the buried secret never released him. 3 days after the investigation began, General Vald stepped to a podium. Cameras lined the back wall.
I authorized the junior auxiliary. I signed the order. The blame is mine. A rogue logistics officer presented the plan as acceptable wartime necessity. I should have refused.
His voice cracked. Cameras caught the tremor in his hand as he gripped the prepared statement.
I failed those children. I failed this kingdom. I accept full responsibility and will retire immediately.
In a shabby rented room across town, Riku watched the broadcast. His coffee had gone cold.
A lie wrapped in truth. But it's the only shield the dead will ever get.
Outside the press room, the crowd's anger wavered. In the silence, someone began to cry. The general, who had once been a war hero, was now the face of a nation's guilt. But the queen remained untouched. Riku turned off the television. The memorial would happen now. The 40 names would be carved in stone. The next day, the kingdom declared a national day of mourning. Black banners hung from every window. Riku walked through streets that had become a river of silent grief. Strangers wept openly.
This is what they should have felt 8 years ago. This is what we were owed.
He passed impromptu shrines where families laid flowers and letters under photographs of missing children. He paused before one with a faded picture of a girl in a scout uniform. Someone's daughter, someone's friend.
I don't know her name, but I know she was in that battalion. She was one of us.
At the memorial site, workers were carving 40 names into a long granite wall. Dust filled the air.
Akeno's name will be there, near the center. I made sure.
He watched a mother press her palm against an unfinished name, her shoulders shaking. The ceremony would be tomorrow. He would stand in the crowd, anonymous, and finally let go. The memorial plaza filled with thousands. Black clothing stretched to every edge under a gray sky. A speaker ascended the podium. The wind carried each name across the silent crowd, and the kingdom listened. Riku stood near the back, his face unreadable. He had waited a decade for this moment. One by one, the names were called. Kenji Sato, Mayuko Tani, Toru Yoshida. The crowd wept, then a name that stopped his heart. Akeno Fujimoto. The world pressed in around him.
Akeno, there you are. They finally say your name.
A single tear traced the dust on his cheek. He did not wipe it away, letting it fall. The last name echoed. 40 souls, now carved into the kingdom's memory.
I kept my promise. You are remembered. Not as bait, but as children.
The ceremony ended, but the mourning had only begun. Riku slipped away, still carrying the one name he could never say aloud. Riku lingered at the granite wall, his hand close to Akeno's carved name. An elderly man in a faded veteran's uniform approached. leaning on a cane. His eyes held the same haunted look, the look of someone who had tried to stop the slaughter. He stopped beside Riku and spoke quietly. "You gave them back their names."
He knows. He was one of the officers who objected back then.
The old man had been a logistics captain, one of the few who had refused to sign the equipment requisitions. Without another word, the officer touched Riku's shoulder and hobbled away into the dispersing crowd.
He carried the same guilt, and he knew I'd done it.
Alone again, Riku looked at the 40 names. The weight on his chest felt a fraction lighter. He turned from the memorial, the one name he'd hidden still burning. But the 40 had their echo now. Before dawn, Riku stood in his barracks room. The corkboard held 40 names for the last time. He unpinned the card that read Akeno and slid it into his pocket. The board looked empty now. The streets were silent as he walked to the memorial, the first light breaking the horizon. At the granite wall, he knelt and placed the worn card at the base, just below her engraved name. The card bore a single word in his handwriting: promise.
I kept my promise. You are remembered.
He stood and took one last look at the 40 names. The sun warmed his back. Then he turned and walked away, the card still resting where he had left it. A small candle flickered at the wall, left by someone else, its flame steady against the breeze. Riku kept walking into the dawn, the names of the 40 now part of the kingdom's memory. Later that day, Riku walked through the city. The black banners were gone, but the silence still lingered. He paused at a small shrine where a young child, no older than 10, carefully placed a wild flower. A mother nearby whispered, "Those were children just like you." The child nodded, not fully understanding.
A new generation will grow up knowing their names. That is enough.
He passed the Queen's statue. A single black ribbon had been tied to its base, a mark of silent doubt. No one knew who had put it there, but it would stay until the wind took it. He walked past the military tribunal building. Inside, a clerk stamped the case file. Classified. The full truth would never leave that file. Riku had made sure of it. The day continued, ordinary and unremarkable. But the 40 names now belonged to the kingdom. And Riku walked on, carrying the one name that would remain his alone. That evening, Riku returned to the barracks for the last time. The room was empty. He stood before the corkboard. 39 names waited. The 40th was already with him. One by one, he unpinned the cards, each name a face, a voice he would never hear again. He gathered them into a bundle and bound them with a simple cotton string. Above his bunk, only the nail remained where Akeno's dog tag had once hung. He picked up his shoulder bag and walked out without looking back. The hallway was silent. His footsteps sounded for the last time on the worn floorboards. At the main gate, the guard gave a silent nod. No words were needed. He walked into the evening, the bundle of names secure inside his coat. He had carried their names for a decade. Now the world would carry them forever, even if it never knew the whole truth.